Have you ever really stopped to think about what you're capable of? I mean, what kind of raw primal will to survive is just sitting there, dormant, inside all of us? Today, we're diving into one of the most unbelievable survival stories you will ever hear. This is the story of Aron Ralston. So let's set the scene. The date is April 26, 2003. The place, Bluejohn Canyon, deep in the Utah desert. We're talking about a seriously remote, rugged landscape of narrow slot canyons. And this is where one man's solo adventure is about to take a very, very sharp turn. You know, it's the ultimate hypothetical, right? It's the kind of thing we might ask ourselves just for fun, never, ever expecting we'd have to actually answer it. But for one man, this question wasn't a game. It became a brutal, life-changing reality. Aron Ralston was an experienced mountaineer. For him, a solo canyoneering trip was just another day at the office. But this day, while he was descending a narrow passage, a huge boulder, a chalkstone that had been suspended above him, shifted. It fell, and it pinned his right arm against the hard canyon wall. And this wasn't just some rock. We're talking about a boulder that weighed an estimated 800 pounds. Just try to picture that. It was an immovable object. He was completely, totally, and utterly stuck. And here's the kicker. This is the mistake that took a horrifying situation and turned it into a potential death sentence. Ralston had broken the #1 rule of the outdoors. He didn't tell anyone where he was going. Nobody knew his plans. Nobody was looking for him. So who was this guy? How did he end up here, all alone in this canyon? Well, to really get a handle on his incredible will to survive, you first have to understand the life that he chose. See, this wasn't some inexperienced kid looking for a thrill. Aron Ralston was brilliant, a Carnegie Mellon graduate, double majored. He had this successful career as a mechanical engineer at Intel, and he walked away from it all. Why? For a life of adventure in the mountains. And that engineer's mind, a mind trained to solve impossible problems, well, it was about to get the test of a lifetime. And when I say he was committed, I mean he was all in. His goal was to be the first person ever to climb all of Colorado's 14ers, that's peaks over 14,000 feet, by himself in the winter. He'd quit his job to go climb Denali and had even survived a massive grade 5 avalanche just a few months before this. This was a man who understood risk. He lived with it. So, back in the canyon, pinned by the rock, time just began to stretch into this agonizing eternity. For 5 days, Ralston fought against the inevitable. You know, the first couple of days were all about this futile struggle against the rock, just chipping away at it, hoping for a miracle. But by day 3, severe dehydration and delirium started setting in, and this unthinkable thought began to form in his mind: amputation. By the 5th day, he was completely out of food and water. He took out his camcorder and recorded his goodbyes to his family, absolutely certain he wasn't going to make it through the night. This number, it's just staggering. 350 milliliters. That's less than a single can of soda. That's all the water he had to make last for 5 days in the brutal desert heat. The physical toll must have been just immense. And as he was right there on the absolute brink of death, something shifted. He started to hallucinate. He had this incredibly vivid vision of himself in the future, with part of his right arm missing, playing with a little boy, a son he hadn't even met yet. Ralston said later that it was this powerful vision that gave him the absolute unwavering belief that he had to live. And that vision, it sparked one of the most incredible, gut-wrenching escapes you can possibly imagine. It was a brutal, cold calculation for survival, carried out with that engineer's problem-solving mind and a mountaineer's grit. On the morning of the 6th day, with his arm already starting to decompose, he had an epiphany. A horrible, brilliant idea. His cheap, dull multi-tool couldn't possibly cut through bone. But he realized he could use the torque of his own body against his trapped arm to snap the bones inside. So that's what he did. First, he broke the 2 bones in his forearm. Then, for an entire, painful hour, he used the tiny, dull knife on his multi-tool to saw through the skin, the muscle, and the tendons. But he wasn't free yet. He still had to rappel, one-handed, down his 65-foot wall, and then somehow hike for miles to find help. When you look at it like this, it wasn't an act of madness at all. It was a calculated, logical choice. Doing nothing meant certain death. Amputating his own arm, as horrifying as that is, at least gave him a chance. And he took that chance. And incredibly, after hiking for miles, bleeding, exhausted, he ran into a family on vacation. He was found. He survived. But what happens after that? After you live through the unthinkable, how do you even begin to go on? A hero's journey doesn't just stop when the credits roll. Ralston's life after the canyon has been this really complex mix of triumph and struggle. He kept climbing, he got married, he became a father. That vision he had actually became a reality. But he also faced immense personal challenges, including a divorce and even a highly publicized arrest. It just paints a picture of a real, complicated human being, not just a simple survival myth. He told his own story in a best-selling book, which was then turned into that critically acclaimed film, 127 Hours, starring James Franco. His story of survival just resonated with people all over the world, and he became this powerful symbol of human endurance. And Ralston was deeply involved in making that film. And you don't have to take my word for its authenticity. He said it himself. The film is so accurate, it's pretty much a documentary. That's a testament to just how raw and real his harrowing experience was on screen. But of course, this story doesn't just have a perfect Hollywood ending. Life after the rescue was a whole new kind of battle. Yeah, he continued to climb, he even finished his 14ers project, but he also battled with depression. He had to figure out a new purpose for his life, a life that had been so profoundly and so publicly defined by those 127 hours. And that really leaves us with this one big question to think about. Aron Ralston will always be the guy who cut off his own arm, but his story really asks us to consider something deeper. Does one single, extraordinary moment define an entire life? Or is the true measure of a person found in everything they managed to build and rebuild in the aftermath?